Hersheypark is, I think, like a true global theme park destination. And for a park that has such an impressive lineup, I don't think it gets quite the same level of recognition that like other parks in a similar weight class get. Because I would put it there in the Kings Island, Kings Dominion, Carowinds, Canada's Wonderland kind of bracket of parks that sit just below the Cedar Point, Six Flags, Great Adventure conversation. Although Great Adventure's conversations are a little different looking these days. But I think it's right up there. In fact, I would say that in the most recent consideration of like park coaster collections, with the way that some of the Cedar Fair, Six Flags parks have been cutting their rides, I think I would put Hersheypark just below Cedar Point and Magic Mountain.
And speaking of Magic Mountain, did you know that the Metro trains from Six Flags Magic Mountain's Metro, which was their monorail that operated from 1971 to 2001, they were actually sent to Hersheypark in 2011 after Hersheypark bought them as part donors for their own Universal Mobility monorail. So the monorail is still operating, though it wasn't open during our visit, but it is still standing and occasionally operating at Hersheypark. And if you're ever there, you may very well be riding a train from Magic Mountain, or at least parts on that train are definitely from Magic Mountain, which is kind of cool.
I love that monorail, the Magic Mountain one and the Hersheypark one.
And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to an episode of Coaster Kings Radio. And today's episode is all about Hersheypark in Hershey, Pennsylvania. You know, kind of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory real life. And even though it's not quite as chocolatey as the name may imply, they've really invested in like becoming more chocolate and like candy focused thematically in recent years, which is kind of interesting because now there is all sorts of candy branded attractions in non-candy branded areas. That itself is a conversation we'll have a little bit later on. But we just visited, maybe like, was it last week? Man, we just went.
Yeah.
My timelines are all jacked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty awesome. And we had a good time. We rode every single coaster there that matters, except for, you know, like Coco Cruiser and stuff. And Laugh Track, because the lines were long and we just didn't really care.
We'd
already been on it before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the mouse, you know, like we skipped a couple of things that we would rather just rewrite some other rides in the park. And it was actually our first time riding Wildcat's Revenge, which was, for me, a pleasant surprise. I actually personally liked it. Yeah, but we'll dive in that in a little bit. But overall, yeah, we had a good day. It was a summer day, and it didn't feel like it was too crazy busy, which was nice. We got on all the things we wanted to get on, and we had a good time. And we even had to wait out a little rainstorm, and that all didn't really affect our day. We had a good time. Had
really
my walk-in
nice.
tacos I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got our walk-in tacos.
It was really nice.
Yeah, we didn't eat a lot of chocolate. We're not as big on like the food component of the Hershey branding, but we do like the rides, and we rode at least one Hershey candy themed ride on our visit, the Jolly Rancher Remix. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. That was an interesting change, especially for us as huge Vekoma Boomerang enthusiasts, Vekoma Boomerang simps. That's a fun one to talk about. But yeah, like you said, I think a big takeaway from this visit, because it's been 5 years. The last time we went, Candemonium had just opened.
Time flies, yeah. Mm-hmm. 5 years already. Mm-hmm.
And like, I think Candemonium has helped usher in this new era of really reinvesting in the brand, the Hershey brand, and using the rides as an opportunity to boost brand recognition. I guess they were doing that with the Triple Tower. That was, I think that was before Candemonium, was it not?
Triple Tower, yeah, that was before
Candemonium.
That
was your first visit.
Yeah, it was, and they had that whole,
it was already there,
like specialty drink set up right in front of it.
Yeah, the bubbles. That was fun. That was a cool thing. But yeah, there's now that more and more of the candy themed attractions, you have the Jolly Rancher rides, and you have the Twizzler ride is their new thing, the Scream and Swing, which looks very cool. in its location. It's just
So
interesting.
to me, it feels a little bit invasive because you have, I guess the part of the park is, it's very next to the Hollow, but then it's set up on like Hershey Kisses Hill or the Kiss Tower Hill.
Tower Hill. Hershey's always kind of had vague theming.
Yeah.
Like they had these.
But then also it's like a bright red, massive attraction that sits on the side of a hill.
Yeah.
And between what was previously kind of old 70s, 80s, 90s decor, you know, I almost kind of compared it to like old Magic Mountain look. Up on that hill with Coal Cracker and Great Bear and whatnot.
Like
and then you have this like super bright, flashy thing, like a ride in your face. I guess we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, but I didn't think, I don't know if the candy theme is really for me.
I think they're at a turning point here. They've got their themed areas. The area that the Twizzler ride is in, and like Great Bear and the Kissing Tower, that area is supposed to be themed to coal mining. And like in the 80s, everything was fairly cohesive about that. And that's why the log flume was called the Coal Cracker. Everything was coal. But I mean, even in the 90s with Great Bear and stuff, it's not like there was this huge commitment to telling a themed story, or like with Storm Runner and Fahrenheit. Like they've never been particularly married to these themed areas. It was more about just like what kind of aesthetic the rides were surrounded by landscaping wise, but theming wise, it was just sort of whatever. But now these rides have themes. They're themed to candy. And it is like another step away from the themed experience of these areas.
And I feel like I wouldn't hate that theme if it was, you say you take apart the park, you turn to like Hershey's Chocolate Factory or whatever, and like, you know, then it's like, okay, great. There's a bunch of candy themed rides.
Myself, I'd wondered like if it was really realistic to have an area that was all the candy stuff, and I guess not.
Well, if you theme it to like a little factory or whatever, then it's one thing, because that's the whole like the whole Chocolate Factory theme is a phenomenon that's been around for years, and of course by pop culture, like Charlie and Chocolate Factory has been exemplified. They've kind of played into it a little bit in the entrance of the park now in Chocolate Town. But my problem is you have Pioneer Frontier with Jolly Rancher Remix next to the Horse Themed Launch Coaster, and like that's a clash.
These days.
You know, you've got Coal Cracker and Great Bear, which are aesthetically kind of, they match each other, and then you throw Twizzler, Super Crazy Twizzler in there, whatever it's called, and then like, wow, now it looks really odd.
There's just like a change in art direction that is coming from these new candy rides. The colors are really bright and bold. And even with rides like Great Bear and Storm Runner not being very explicit in their theme tie-ins, they were like fairly muted in their color palettes, and the art direction for the branding was all kind of, you know, it was milder. It wasn't like super bright or flashy. And now you have these candy rides. I definitely think the Jolly Rancher rides are the biggest offenders, because that little area of the park still is like fairly cohesive with its like western area. And even Storm Runner, like the name is sort of like that, you know, it's about horse racing. And I liked it better when it was Sidewinder, but I get it. Like I understand why they're doing this. It's
clearly the marketability is great. I mean, the longest line that we saw all day was for the Boomerang.
Yeah.
And previously we'd always kind of walked onto it, even though it was always in good shape. They had reinforced the loop. They had magnetic brakes, had the MK12 frames. This was way before they even went with the Jolly Rancher theme or Jolly Roger
they spent
theme.
A ton of money on that ride
Jolly Rancher
first, and then did the Jolly Rancher remix, and then like the Nebula's ride in the inside of the Boomerang, which I think is a very clever use of space, even though the color palette is like too bright. Even for me, it's a lot. Like if I'm saying it's too bright, it's too bright, because I love bright colors.
I mean, clearly marketing is marketing, but when they did Candemonium, which I think was their first re-entry to really a candy theme something, because of course they had the Reese's Cup Challenge that was inside, so that this didn't seem as
they had
invasive.
Been, like, dabbling with it, and then I think now they have officially.
And then the Kisses Tower, it was like, okay, well, you know, it's a normal looking tower with the Kisses shaped windows like very that. It's just kind of cute,
branding.
You know. But then with Candemonium, it was pretty subtle because the whole track is, you know, is chocolate color, and then you have your great supports, and then the trains were each themed to a candy.
Yeah.
And then that all kind of worked for me. But now we're just throwing colors at this park that I don't think work. But anyway, that all aside, we'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the conversation, because I think all things considered, it's still really one of America's coaster destinations.
This is
that is
something
not
that I'm
disputable.
noticing about this particular visit. But man, generally speaking, this park is like the best thing in America that regional parks have going for it. And it's not really
but
a regional
I really think
park
it is
anymore.
A true destination, though. Yeah, exactly, because you've got your hotels, you've got the historic little Hershey town, you've got Chocolate World, you have, of course, the massive theme park that, especially if you want to do the water park, can be a 2-3 day destination, because we've done 2 days the last 2 visits, actually. And then you have your resort, your campgrounds. I really do think it's kind of quite a destination. Like, you go to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and then there's kind of history. You have Zoo America. Like, if you really are someone that wants to do all that there is to do, you can easily spend 3-4 days in this vicinity. So I really do think it's truly a destination. But in the coaster sense, we're going to discuss today why. And what we'll do is we'll just kind of talk about our day at the park as we went around the rides. The first thing we hit up was Fahrenheit. We got there around opening. I guess I'd forgotten that the park, Chocolate Town, the part of Chocolate Town, which is the entrance where Candemonium is, actually opens a whole hour early to start getting guests in. There's some restaurants and some shops, whatnot, and of course a roller coaster.
That coaster is so high capacity, you might as well let people...
That, and it's kind of bottlenecky, so that way you kind of get people, like, you can get your first phase of people in and your second phase of people in. Yeah, which is a great way, because especially if you consider how the park is laid out, which makes absolutely no sense. And if you were to design it from scratch, people aren't going to be visiting your racing wooden coaster in the back of the park until 2-3 hours later. So in order to kind of, everyone's obviously going to hit Candemonium first when they get in, the general public maybe. So by getting everyone to have already ridden that by the time the park actually opens, they all will already move on into the park, which at this point I think just helps with getting crowds to rides earlier in the day. I think it's a smart strategy. But it did mean that we didn't ride it first. So when we got in, we actually went to the back of the park, and we decided to hit up Fahrenheit first, which I still think is one of the coolest names. Maybe it's because when I was younger, I watched this one documentary with my dad, and I can't remember what it was. It must have been like Discovery Channel or something. Remember that was a thing? And they were talking about the coasters at Hersheypark, and Fahrenheit had like a big focus. And I still remember my dad saying, "Oh, we'll go there one day." But we still lived in Europe. And it wasn't until 2017 that Alex and I actually went together on our first vacation together. It was our first vacation together, wasn't it?
It was our first big trip, yeah.
Yeah, our first coaster vacation, just put it that way. And so, Fahrenheit for me is kind of a special place. It doesn't run anything. It doesn't run that well compared to the other intimates in the park. For me, not really. But it is such a unique, weird ride. And then the marketing for it, Fahrenheit, sounds so American in a way, but it's so clean. And I don't know. Don't you think the marketing is just genius?
Yeah.
Fahrenheit.
I can see how a European
Who the hell names it after like a unit?
When they announced the name of it, I was surprised, because I was like, okay, that's an interesting choice.
95 degrees of
107
thrill
degrees
or heat, whatever they call it.
Like, it's so smart.
Oh, whatever, yeah. So smart. Is it really 107 degrees, Steve?
Yeah. Yeah, the drop is 107 degrees.
Why did I think it was 95? Okay.
That was a great marketing gimmick for them. Or I think it's 107. Maybe it was 97. No, I can't remember.
97 maybe. Hold up. Now I'm going to Google that while you continue talking.
I could have sworn it was 100. I feel like I can remember the tagline like it was yesterday. I feel like that ride kind of helped usher in this
97
era.
degrees.
Oh, 97.
It's 97 degrees. Okay, I was closer, okay?
I was adding a few extra inches there.
I was like, no way, it's that steep. Okay, that's funny. Yeah.
That's a cool ride. And I think appreciation for that ride has ebbed and flowed. When it was new, when it was announced, it was, I remember it being talked about a lot in the context of Maverick, because it opened a year after Maverick, and it has the same trains, the 3 vehicle looper trains. So I remember it kind of being talked about.
Even the way that it runs through the corkscrews and airtime hills, it definitely feels kind of like an alternate universe Maverick, where they just focus on different kinds of elements.
It was essentially
I can totally see
the same
it.
product line. It's just they swapped out the launches for the vertical lift, which is something that Intamin hasn't done a whole lot of since, but they've done it fairly recently at a park in China, where they built what looks like a giant version of Fahrenheit. almost more like
with a vertical lift too. Yeah.
It's got like the double chain
and it's
lift.
kind of funny because if you look at the chain lift for Fahrenheit, it really is the same chain lift as the Zach spins.
Yeah.
So it's a double, instead of having anti-rollbacks, you guys have two lift chains. So one fills, the other one is the backup.
It was a very particular
I think it looks
window
so clean. It looks
like
so
era
bulky
for Intamin. Like the late 2000s, early 2010s, where they like their style choices were very pronounced for that. I think the ride struggled with just like as a new ride, it did well, but I don't think anybody liked it as much as Stormrunner, because Stormrunner is such a tough act to follow. The Stormrunner to this day is one of the best roller coasters in the country. And as the hydraulic launch coasters continue to disappear, Stormrunner's value just keeps going up and up and up. Fahrenheit was, well liked for being different and weird, and like it's got the Norwegian pretzel loop thing that Speed Monster at Tusenfree popularized. It's got a nice couple, cobra roll, some corkscrews. Like it was a nice.
In a way, how I looked at it prior to maybe recent years is I always kind of thought of it as like Intamin's approach to like a Eurofighter kind of ride. Of course, Definitely. It's much bigger.
Yeah.
But you have your vertical lift, you have your beyond vertical drop. You've got a couple of quirky elements, but they do a lot of inversions pretty fast in a row. And it doesn't take up that much space for a ride with that height and speed. So, for me, it was kind of like, how can we do a higher capacity, like vertical drop, quirky kind of Eurofighter that suits a larger park, and maybe because they already had Stormrunner, they wanted to diversify it as much as possible, but it kind of checked a bunch of boxes. I think it was almost like reverse engineered. It was like, what does Hersheypark need? What's marketable? Okay, we need like a tall vertical, because this is for Skyrush, so we need to be on vertical drop because we already have a vertical drop on Stormrunner. We need more inversions than Stormrunner that are also different than Stormrunner. We need some airtime. We need something compact that looks like marketable. I don't know. I just feel like they kind of reverse engineered and they just came up with this design.
This specific plot of land. It's one of the few coasters at Hersheypark that is not a terrain coaster.
It's in a small little slit. There's not much space there at all.
The topography at Hersheypark is quite varied, and even rides that don't at first seem like they would be a terrain ride, like Wildcat's Revenge, they're terrain oriented in parts, and whereas this is strictly a flat, like a pad coaster. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the ride was a fun collage of things that they wanted to accomplish with this coaster. They had a lot of boxes to check, and they ended up with something really unique. It's a fun ride. It's very popular. It doesn't have the best capacity, but like people.
But it's not terrible though.
Wrote it
the
first
capacity,
because that one,
I think,
the line gets really tedious. It runs 3 trains well. It's a decent, satisfying ride. It doesn't. It kind of rattles its way through. It's got that Intamin rattle, but it always has.
So I will say, over the visits, I've actually gotten more and more impressed by it. Maybe because we ride more coasters, we travel more, and I'm starting to like lean towards. I'm a looper person. For anyone that doesn't know, at this point, I'm a looper person. So I love my looping coasters, and so for me, it's starting to become like one of those unique attractions that, even though it's aging away any Intamin would age, with lots of character and trembling, I start to enjoy the ride more for what it is, because it is so weird, and it is so one-off.
At the time, you think, like, is this going to be something we'll see more of? And then we never did. Like, Fahrenheit remains a very unique...
But that window of Intamin coasters, or that window of just loopers, was so weird to begin with, because it was also when the Eurofighter started getting popular, of course, in that context. We just had, we're just moving away from big Intamin loopers like Colossus, even though it has a couple Colossus quirks.
Yeah.
It moved away from that. And, they were experimenting with Maverick, which is actually an experiment on the Aqua Tracks, which we talked about 2 episodes ago.
The Aqua Tracks.
It's like, it's all just kind of coming together, and then
things.
like they all left it behind, and they just continue with, I think, what kind of the Maverick product line is, like the modern LSM, retire the Stormrunner.
I'm guessing that Fahrenheit
kind of
was really expensive, and the reason that they didn't sell more of those was because Gerschlauer was just offering such a similar product for way cheaper. That would be way less space. I know Fahrenheit was very expensive.
Fahrenheit's still much bigger than a Eurofighter, though.
Alone is a very sturdy, expansive system. It was probably almost as much as Maverick, even though it's a shorter ride, just because it's so tall. It has so many tall inversions and lots of bracing and stuff. But yeah, and then when Skyrush opened, I feel like Fahrenheit was very quickly relegated to like the other coasters collection. Stormrunner had this lasting appeal that I don't think Fahrenheit was awarded with the same degree. It's hard being the middle child between those two.
Still look at that collection of 3 as in like the signature 3 intimates for that park. And Hersheypark has a great collection of roller coasters, clearly. But even within like the worldwide lineups of roller coasters, their 3 intimates are all like super unique.
Very.
I feel like it's like the only hydraulically launched coaster with a bunch of inversions and stuff. Like Stormrunner, we all know that.
Intamin looper with multiple inversions, I think.
Correct, because there was the one in Chuhai that has the one vertical loop.
That one's got the one vertical loop. And then it wasn't long after... I mean, it wasn't... By the end of the decade, they had all started doing the Maverick style, rides like the one at Mirabilandia, Ice Speed. Ice Speed was like the beginning of the next generation of these launch coasters.
It really was the Maverick generation when I think that kind of approach took over. But yeah, and of course you have Fahrenheit that's completely unique, and then you have Skyrush, which is completely unique.
Yeah, super.
So all things considered, that little trio of intimates is like if you're an intimate fanboy, this is like an ideal park.
It's necessary reading.
You have to visit here. Yeah. So anyway, after we visited the newest coaster in the park, which was Wildcat's Revenge. And I don't think I have to tell longtime listeners that we're not really big RMC people. I get the hype for them that like it, but I don't hype it myself. I don't really care for RMCs like that, which is why it probably took us so long to ride Wildcat's Revenge. Because how long is it open for now? Like 3 years?
Yeah, it opened
2 years, 3 years?
2023, right?
Yeah,
I think.
Actually, I should know this. Oh my god, am I a bad enthusiast? This is how much I don't really care for these rides.
Not to be shitty, but
we sent Ian to the event.
Ian was there.
Ian was there,
and it's a good looking ride.
Find out.
I think not to sound.
Oh, yeah, it is 23. Oh, it's 2 years old. Okay.
Not to sound crummy, but like I think for me, I'm reaching a point with the RMCs. I mean, I've never particularly cared for them. I do find them to be unnecessarily abrasive on like the lap area, the upper leg area, the shin area, especially with the later generation of trains that meet in the middle at a single pivoting point. So it's like it's even tighter on your legs than like with the Six Flags generation, that first round of 2-point ratcheting or 2-point pivoting lap bar. But I think this was the time where like we rode it twice. I was determined to give it like a fair shake of like a front seat ride, back seat ride, and like man, like these rides are just not for me. It's not a cross that Wildcat's Revenge has to bear uniquely. It's just go ahead.
Why I liked it better than most RMCs is because, and maybe this is also why I like Iron Gouache so much and I like Joker so much. Because they're all GCIs, so they're all they're all not graphic. Sorry, GCI. They're all GCIs, Great Coasters International, and so their layouts were always kind of like twistery, right? The whole point of those layouts were twister layouts. So I feel like in the newer versions of these coasters, that's really kind of carried over. And so even though there's some really sharp moments of airtime on Wildcat's Revenge, which is not what I usually gravitate towards liking, there's enough other stuff going on here that I really enjoy, which I think why I like it so much. And I've always loved Joker, the conversion from Roar at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. And it has a couple of moments here where it kind of pays homage to that because the layouts were so similar, Wildcat and Roar. So I think that's why I like it so much. You have the step up underflip, you have the stall, which are both found on Roar. You have a Zero G also found, on Joker, also found on Joker. And then there's that part where where Wildcat was kind of a terrain coaster, so there's a part of the front of the ride, on the midway side, where it would kind of dip down the hill and come back up. And now they have added an inversion into like a zero G roll into that swoop down to the bottom of the hill. Then you have an overbank, and then you have another zero G roll. And the way that all flows to me is like such a good moment. It may even be my favorite 15 seconds on any RMC. And that alone for me was such a highlight. And then I will say like the last 2 airtime hills kind of murder you. But The rest of the ride, yeah, I don't know. I just really enjoyed it. I enjoy how it's not a super crazy airtime machine, and it's not back-to-back-to-back airtime hills. Like, sorry, Steel Vengeance, I still don't really care for you because the back-to-my airtime hills really bug me. They're just so repetitive and they're too much for me.
Yeah,
so the lack of that, I enjoy on this.
I've reached a point where we went to King's Dominion the next day. We did not ride Twisted Timbers. I just do not care. Like, I simply am not interested in riding these rides unless I've never ridden it before. But having said that, I do like Wildcats Revenge a lot. I think it has a nice presence. It's a beautiful looking ride. I really enjoyed watching it, especially that part you were talking about, the lower bowl, right before it wraps up into the final breaks. That's a beautiful moment, and I loved. We were admiring it from the station on our second ride. We were waiting for the front row and watching it take the barrel roll or the 0G roll down, over and down, and the second one, I guess the final inversion on the ride, it clears like the pre-lift, the lift hill on the underside, and it's also immediately underneath the roll that takes you into the valley. And it's like this beautiful moment of like three very near misses, like three other points in the ride that the ride is passing, navigating around so closely. And
I think that actually, Alex, highlights how far they have come, because of course I would like to compare it to Joker, but Joker's early generation.
Yeah.
So they really used that original structure, didn't add much structure to it, and then they just used whatever was there and then put bars up to make the new track fit. But now they've gotten so creative where I feel like, especially for this ride, there's almost none of the original structures used at all. Like, let's face it, it's mostly new structure.
I think they made some beautiful choices. Like, my interest
now
in
they can really
rides might be waning, but I don't think it's a bad ride. In fact, I think it's a fabulous ride objectively, and was the right choice for the park. I think, like you said, it's not as airtime focused as some RMCs are. It has that one big camelback hill after the step up underflip that I love. That is a part of the ride that I really enjoy. The 4 or 5 like really rough jackhammery airtime hills are enough to like make me hate the ride personally. But there are a lot of things on this ride that I love, because like the lower bowl turnaround is beautiful. The camelback hill is gorgeous. The pre-lift is awesome because it is so. You start up so high, and you kind of barrel your way down the hill. Proper drop out of the station, which I don't know if another RMC has done something quite that dramatic, where it's a good 20-foot drop out of the station, which is just awesome.
People haven't really talked about that a whole lot.
Yeah, I had no idea. I hadn't realized that it did that until we were standing up there, and I'm like, oh wow, like it's a steep drop. It gets right to work. So, it's a cool ride. I think it's got 4 inversions, right? It's got like the 2 0G rolls. It's got a stall, and it's got the step up underflip. So I think that is the right number of inversions for this ride, for this park, in a park that already has.
Unless you count that one overbank as an inversion, but I don't think it's banky enough.
Yeah, that's close. It's like 4.5 inversions. Having an inversion heavy conversion here, it reminds me a lot of like Untamed at Wallaby Holland. What the park needed was a looper more than it needed an airtime machine, because Hersheypark has a lot of airtime centric coasters, including several very airtime centric rides that don't even have inversions, like Sky Rush, Candemonium, Lightning Racers, Comet, and then there's loopers that they've got. Fahrenheit has a great airtime hill right at the
Storm
very
Runner
end.
Is full of airtime. I mean, every element is airtime. Yeah.
Even Super Duper Looper's got some airtime in places, especially if you're in the back. So this is a very airtime heavy park. It always has been. That's always been something that they have concerned themselves with. Is like,
that's the good news for that airtime. Because now Wildcats Revenge is not a crazy airtime machine.
And now Wildcats Revenge has good airtime, but it's not really a machine for it. It's almost like this generation's Fahrenheit. It was like, we need, if we're going to build a ride that's marketable and it's going to complement this lineup of rides that we already have, it needs to do a bunch of different things. It needs to have inversions. It needs to do, some things that like maybe we haven't seen in the industry before.
It actually made me realize something, and that is that, and this is something I'm realizing now mid-conversation, is anytime Hersheypark builds something, it's like they don't just do the gimmick, they actually have a really complete ride, because Fahrenheit's gimmick really is just beyond the vertical drop, right? But they also have airtime on that's pretty good, really unique inversions. Then you've got Storm Runner, the gimmick is the crazy launch, but then you have really good inversions. This is Terrain Coaster, the flying snake dive, legendary. Then you've got Great Bear, which is really it doesn't invert as much as you think for a ride that's that big. It does a lot of a lot of swooping, almost like an inverted super fast mine train. With inversions, there's just a lot of these Hersheypark rides that where the gimmick is not where the ride ends. Even though the generation they were built in is where the gimmick would end. When Stormrunner was built, your hydraulic launch coaster wasn't going to have inversions on it. Let alone 3 inversions.
Quantum leap. That was such a huge jump from
when you built your beyond vertical
or...
drop back then, the ride wasn't going to be that big. It wasn't going to do all that and have airtime on it because the Eurofighters didn't do that much. They're pretty small rides, especially in the beginning. So when I think about this, I look at every single Hersheypark ride we're discussing here, because in their respective opening timelines, they really were doing way more than they needed to. They were all terrain coasters mostly, and they were all doing a lot more than the gimmick that was usually just sold at the other park, Where it kind of makes you think of if you were to have built a dive coaster with inversions back when Oblivion opened, then it would have been crazy legendary. You know what I'm
saying? If Hersheypark had built a B&M dive coaster in 2001 or 2002, it would have had
3 inversions.
They would have forced it to be something really unusual. They know how to market a ride. They've got rides that are very marketable, but also very substantial. I think Hersheypark is a park that has a really great idea of what their lineup needs. Candemonium, isn't necessarily the most flashy or super marketable.
But it's exactly what they needed, though.
But they knew exactly what they knew what they needed. They knew it wasn't a secret to anybody that Skyrush was just not
the X2 of the park.
It was not the sponge that they thought it would be, not this ultra crowd pleasing high capacity ride that they expected it would be. So Candemonium, it was even though we have something that is similar on paper to this, we really don't have a ride like this in the park. And it's going to work. We're going to open it and people are going to come and ride it and it's going to work. It's going to be marketable in a way that might not seem obvious at first. And I think they did the same thing with Wildcat's Revenge. We're 12 years into this whole trend of Iron Horse RMC coasters, and I think by the time Hersheypark decided that was what they needed, there was even the enthusiasts, it's we love these rides, but okay, what is this one gonna do? Is this going to be one that sets itself apart from what's already been done? Will what the developers for these rides have learned in the last 12 years of building these rides, will that be evident? Will we see some things that make the ride justify itself? And they absolutely did. It's I think it's a really beautiful ride. It has a nice mix of things that other RMCs have been doing. It's a little bit of Iron Gwazi, it's a little bit of Joker, it's a little bit of Untamed. It is a great mosaic of things that work really well with that ride system. To the point where it's a super marketable ride for anybody. Any coaster enthusiast that has, whether you've ridden an RMC conversion or not. This is I don't know, what's the nearest Iron Horse coaster to this? Probably Twisted Timbers, right? In Kingston.
Yeah, Twisted Timbers not that far.
These rides are around. It's not like it's a brand new idea. And Hersheypark.
One thing I do want to add about this is that this is the first RMC conversion, Iron Horse, to feature a dual station, which is really nice because I didn't realize how much it's very nice to have that. And instead of having the transfer track be just a transfer track to slide right over to the maintenance barns, it is used as a one-sided train exit only. But because they do that, they only have, you enter the train also on one side, meaning that the sides of the trains are all covered. So you can't even exit out into the wrong side because you just can't get out of the train that way. And I was really impressed with that setup because even though we'll talk about this a little bit more later, operations were honestly not great on our visit. I don't think
they're great
that having the 2
visit.
stations helped out really well. Is that at least the train was unloading, even though the train was definitely still sitting in a station loading. When the train came back to the station, it didn't have to sit. There was no stacking because it would just unload into what would have otherwise been a brake run or a transfer track where you just sit as a block. I thought it was really clean. I thought it worked out really well, and it made me realize, oh man, I wish more coasters had that. Steel Ventures could have benefited from that. There's definitely a variety of coasters that could have
they have
been
learned
clever.
What is a realistic turnaround time for these rides because they're so
especially because they
fast.
always have the seatbelts, and they have to check your seatbelts, and they have to check the restraints, they're hydraulic, and they're not super efficient dispatchers in general, I think, RMCs, especially not with those newer trains, in my opinion. But all things considered, I think that was a really cool thing about the coaster.
Choice for Hersheypark. They have a great setup with the lockers. Having 2 stations, a load and unload, and the lockers are right in the middle, and they're double-sided, like very smart. There was a lot of thought put into how they were going to do this efficiently, in a way that
I think it was a great addition to the park lineup.
Absolutely,
even though, again, we're not RMC people. For me, it was one of my favorite RMCs.
Yeah, for
but
people,
even like
as someone who doesn't
objectively
particularly care for RMCs, I wouldn't argue that it's not the right fit for the park, because I mean, how many coasters do they have? Like 15 or something by now? I forget. It's on Roller Coaster Database, but
they have 14 coasters. Yeah,
when you have so many coasters, it's like, well, you get creative. You find things that are different than what you've already done. Especially with the park with so many good coasters.
Maybe we can answer this question later, and maybe we should finish the episode with that. Like, what should be next? Because then we can think about it for a little while. Because I couldn't even tell you what they needed because it's such a well-rounded lineup. But let's talk about that towards the end of the episode. Okay. Next on our little list of rides that we did, if you're ready to move on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is Lightning Racers, which, I don't know, man. It's not Joris and the Draak. I prefer a little Efteling version of it. I like it.
I like it too.
It's cool.
I've always liked this ride. It's 25 years old this year. It felt a little rougher than I expected, but I mean, it's not bad. It's just I think it just needs it's probably coming up on its next big track work project. They've been working a lot on like the Comet lately with the new trains and stuff, and doing track work for that. So I think it's probably and now with Wildcat's Revenge, that's all been sorted out. The other wooden coasters, or formerly wooden coasters, have been sorted out, and it's probably time for Lightning Racer to get some big work done. I think it's a cool ride. It's such a great showcase of like what GCI is all about. It's just like the ultimate legacy GCI coaster. When Roar at Six Flags America closes at the end of this year, assuming that it's not getting relocated, which I think is a safe assumption, Lightning Racers will become the oldest of the GCIs. All of the other GCIs from that era are gone now. All of the 90s GCIs will have either been demolished or converted into hybrid coasters. And then I think the next youngest, I think Thunderhead at Dollywood is also one of the older ones now, but definitely Lightning Racers will be the two oldest GCIs here by the end of this season. And I think they're just beautiful rides. Riding it, the choreography of a good racing dueling coaster, it feels like you're riding something that was designed by people that really love roller coasters and love.
True. And I always found the approach a little bit interesting, because if you look at the approach for Lightning Racers and you have those lifts that aren't quite lined up, it almost felt like they just drew a very similar kind of motion in the beginning for the ride anyway, where, you think, the racing coaster, especially historically, the lift hills are kind of attached, and then you have your coaster, right? And then you kind of maybe split off and come back towards the end. But for Lightning Racers, even the lift hill situation is very interesting, how they're 2 separate lift hills that are parallel, but they're kind of off center. So like how do you describe that? I mean, I'm sure most people know, but I find the approach very interesting. It's a
cantilevered lift system. I remember the first time riding it and being surprised that was the method that they went with. I mean, it makes perfect sense, because when the trains, when they do meet up with each other, you're neck and neck like you should be. All this being done to achieve that effect when the trains, line up there at that first far directional turnaround. It was all about finding a solution, I think, to how they were going to fit 2 coasters in this space. And I mean, they had a lot of room to work with, but they also wanted to be smart about it. And where do you put the lift hills? If the lift hills had been side by side, one they take that right turn eventually, to continue into the plot, and one would be in the lead. And I think they found just a very creative solution to keeping the rides parallel to each other for as much of the ride as they can. It's not, I think about like Stardust Racers and how the ride can literally, it's not even as much of a race as much as it is about making sure that the trains are next to each other at all times for the effect. Because like Stardust Racers on the second launch, like it on the first launch too, they line you up. Like the point is that you're supposed to be neck and neck with a ride like Lightning Racers. It's like if you need to get it as close as you can at the beginning of the ride, because it's not going to get any better as the ride goes on. You don't want one train to be like way off in the distance by the time it's all over.
And yeah, exactly. And there's a couple of ways where Stardust Racers, of course, like it's a steel coaster. First of all, it's a modern steel coaster with launches that both adjust to where the trains need to be to race again. So there's a lot more adjustment points. But then you're going to talk about a wooden coaster, a coaster with the most friction in the lexicon of roller coasters. So if one track is a little bit more beat up than the other track, you're already going to run behind. Then there's the way of the train. All that kind of stuff. And there's no adjustment points throughout the ride. Like, you're going to be a really big difference. You can both clear the list at the same time. You can still be a good 5 seconds ahead of the next train at the end of the ride, which is kind of interesting. Which I also think I kind of enjoyed it about Lightning Race is that it does just feel like a wooden roller coaster. You're racing. You can already kind of clearly tell who's going to win towards the middle of the ride. And then there's those moments where you're not next to each other, but you're kind of like waving over each other. You're approaching each other in opposite directions. I enjoy that aspect of it a lot. I just feel like it's going to sound really, really lame, what I'm going to say, but this is a really big ride. And what may be the last plot of the land, maybe one of the only few areas of the park where they actually could replace a really big ride. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like maybe Lightning Races will not be here forever. At least for me, it doesn't have to be here forever. Yeah. I find the location for a racing coaster makes no sense. It's the furthest coaster in the entire park. First of all, like
it's keep Dueling
Dragons anyone? Like, yeah. And then you have not just that. It's also a giant plot where you could really do a lot with if they really wanted to. Either whether it be expanding their highly popular water park, which is sitting right in the middle of the water park, also really awkward. And then, yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know if they need this ride for them. I think
peak days, the ride definitely serves its purpose. It's a great sponge for when the water park is packed to the gills. In fact, now, I think when Wildcat was still its old version, like when we went into 2020, I definitely felt like there was an excess of capacity there in the back of the park with like the 3 full-size wooden coasters and 2 Wild Mouse coasters back there and some other flat rides and stuff. Now that Wildcat's Revenge has happened, I think Lightning Racers is probably experiencing some renewed interest, not just because, the newest coaster in the park is back there and drawing people in, but Wildcat's Revenge is not, it doesn't have the same capacity that it had when it was a wooden coaster. It's an RMC. They don't dispatch as quickly. We know, you brought up a good point with the second station, the unloading station being like a good thing to have for an RMC, because that's just the nature of operating a coaster like this. So I bet now on days when the park is busy, and I'm sure there's days where Wildcat's Revenge lines are an hour, 2 hours, and that's when Lightning Racers really hits its stride, because it does have so much capacity. It's such a sponge. It's a great ride, I think, for kids, because man, you bring your kids there on any given day, they can ride that ride over and over, no problem. There's never going to be this.
Admittedly, with Wildcat now being Wildcat's Revenge, it's a lot less family friendly, if at all.
Yeah, and they lost a family friendly coaster.
At least it's no longer like there's 3.
There was this
almost
big overlap,
very similar in GCIs back there,
and now there's not. Now Lightning Racers it occupies a much more unique role. It plays a much more unique role in the park as the park's modern wooden coaster, whereas before it was one of the modern wooden coasters. Now it is the modern wooden coaster. It's the Twister wooden coaster in the park. So I think it's one of the park's most beautiful and iconic rides. I'd be very sad if they ever redeveloped it. I would hope that there's other points of redevelopment that are on the table sooner. There's a lot in that park I would probably give up first, but then at the same time, there's a lot of great stuff there. I'm not gonna say that I would rather them get rid of like the Log Flume or Super Duper Looper. Like if it came down to it, there's a lot of stuff where I would say like, no, take Lightning Racers.
So for the sake of time, I'd say we move on to Storm Runner. because I think we'll talk about Storm Runner for a while. You had a thought. You want to finish?
No, go for it. I will say the thing I love. My final word on Lightning Racers is that the ride represents this beautiful renaissance of dueling / racing coasters that was happening through the 90s. You had like Stampede and Twisted Twins, Gwazi, Dueling Dragons, Lightning Racers. Like I think this ride was like of all the different kinds of ways, especially for the wooden coasters. There was a dueling wooden coaster project 4 years in a row leading up to Lightning Racers, and I think Lightning Racers was the one that nailed it. Was a perfected approach to this trend that was gaining a lot of traction in the 90s, when parks were really going big and really amping up capacity. It's ironic that it's in a park that didn't need the capacity as badly as any other park that tested the waters with this, except for maybe Kentucky Kingdom. That was still such a strange choice for them to do Twisted Twins. But all this to say, I think the ride is magnificent and still very unique. I still like Joris and the Drac better. I do agree with you.
Oh, yeah, Joris and the Drac I prefer as well. Anyway, so let's move on to Storm Runner, which is the next thing we rode. Well, Storm Runner. She's phenomenal. She's still that girl. That launch still scares me a little bit.
About her. She's so great.
And then the airtime is just so amazing on that still. And then the flying snake dive, where you just fly up in some airtime and then have a complete inline roll or whatever you want to call it into a dive loop way back down to the ground. I mean, it is. I don't know what they did. I don't know what they were thinking when they designed it, but I love whatever they were on.
They designed this ride.
Yeah, but like, can I have some? Yeah, it's amazing. Oh my God, it's a great ride.
Flawless when they were designing this ride.
And it's super terrain coaster because when you launch, you're at one of the higher points of the ride. So you launch, then you have your top hat that dives down way further down, and then kind of down into the valley with your giant Immelman, which is kind of weirdly shaped, very intimate of them.
Such weird shaping, and then that crazy zigzag thing that takes you up to the brake
at the end of the ride.
Every second
just
of this
to clear
ride
the monorail track,
is bizarre.
And of course, our RCT girlies know that like Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 had like a Hersheypark partnership, so like you had the weird elements.
Yeah, you could
from Storm Runner that you could build on the LSM
accurately.
Yeah, except for you had to do it with LSM coaster, I think. But it was just. I think it's one of those phenomenal little rides. There's not much to talk about layout wise, except for just listing those 4 major elements. But they're all kind of slap, and the ride is very, I think, to me, very important in the Hersheypark conversation, because this is one of those rides that really puts it up there with the big other maybe larger coaster collections. And if we're going to talk about quality over quantity, we have this conversation a lot, especially with Cedar Point, where I feel like Cedar Point's top 4, 5, 6 can be really great, but then the rest is kind of, to me, I'm kind of meh. But then at Hersheypark, their top 5, 6 is really great, and then the rest is also really great. And of course, the Storm Runner is in that top collection, but this is just one of those.
I feel like
things you only really ride
have
there.
Any bad rides. Everything there serves a purpose and is objectively successful and likable, even if it's a wild mouse. Like that's, it serves its purpose. It's well liked. People ride it. It's different. But yeah, Storm Runner is the best. That ride has always been great since day one. The value of that ride has never been a point of discussion. It has always been a fabulous, cool ride, and it has done nothing but age beautifully and accrue value and significance in the landscape, in the conversation of these rides. Nothing prior to that ride or since that ride has done what that ride does in quite the same way. So yeah, I think it's riding it this past visit. It's obvious to me that it's really one of the greatest coasters in the country. And every bit as noteworthy as Sky Rush, in some ways even more so. Which I still think Sky Rush is.
I agree. I just love
that people talk about the most.
I just love the history of Intamin and like all these projects they've done, and Hersheypark is a great highlight of seeing how much Intamin is just experimenting with stuff and making things happen. And Storm Runner is no exception for this. Of course, the launch system already existed, but this is the first time they really started playing with inversions like that. It's just such a quirky ride.
We got
it's great.
The Merlin launch coasters. We got King Dakar after, which was cool, but we'd already kind of seen King Dakar. I mean, we got Stealth and Rita and Desert Race, Saturn. There was that
But again,
Stormrunner
none
was
of them
by
really
far.
did what Stormrunner did.
Stormrunner was by far the most interesting moment in that entire timeline of rides, from Accelerator
let's
to
face
Formula
it.
Rasa.
Exactly.
It was by
Like,
far
let's
the most
face it.
interesting ride.
Building a hydraulic launch coaster with a top hat or a couple of turns, that's kind of, yeah, okay, it's been done. But then like building one that does the top hat and then has a bunch of cool inversions after it. I mean, that's like,
And a
I don't know if
terrain
Hersheypark was
coaster.
pushing for it or how it came to be, but man, I'm just happy it's there. It's a great, great, great ride.
Because like none of the hydraulic launch coasters are terrain coasters except for this one. Every single one of them was designed for a flat piece of land, except for Stormrunner.
And I'm sure, I wonder how people felt about it when they were building it, because where it is in the park, it's like kind of like a serene little valley. And then they built this like massive steel
Everybody
beast.
had already made peace with that because of Great Bear.
After Great Bear, yeah.
Great Bear was the line in the sand. That was when Hersheypark decided, like, we're a roller coaster park and we're going to build roller coasters at all costs. And it's going to be great, but it's going to take up your entire field of vision and you're going to like it.
That's funny. So next up in the park, we went to Great Bear, which we just already kind of talked about a little bit. Well, Great Bear is not one of these like super Hershey coasters where like you cannot get more Hersheypark than that. Peak Hershey.
Everybody loves this
another
ride.
one of those coasters where you think would have more inversions than it truly does, because it only has 4 inversions. And then it does the most random stuff. If you can hear that, that's our cat.
Yeah.
Who was it, Bondo or Bill?
It's Bondo. Came down the cat tree.
Little Bondo baby. Anyway, so Great Bear, yes. So a terrain invert, which it's not the first one we've seen, but it is really cool. And then just everything about that ride is just so quirky. Like doing that helix and before the first drop, it could have just gone straight into the first drop. It didn't need the helix.
Like,
they just chose to do it.
Ride. Funny
right?
ride.
That's
so cool.
Weird. And
aging
then
beautifully.
Yeah, a beautiful drop into a massive vertical loop, and then a straight section along the water, into which you can't really enjoy because you go so fast, but then into an Immelman, a snappy 0G roll, and then like a couple of swings into the or over the water, over the canal that runs through the middle of the park, and then the support situation is absolutely wild. The way they made it all fit is just like drawn on a napkin almost. Like they had a little park map, whatever, and they just drew. Maybe they drew on the park map. Oh, it needs to go here, and so they literally did that. And then you have a super snappy little corkscrew or flat spin, as they call that, into an S-turn into the brakes. And everything about this ride just feels so weird. You spend so much time not inverting, which for an inverted coaster is super weird. Like I cannot think of another invert that doesn't even remotely the amount of not inverting. I feel like for Great Bear, it's half the time inversions and the other half is all just flowy moments.
This ride,
and you don't have that on any other coaster.
Is like, it's so special. And it's funny because when they built it, people thought it was disappointing because at this point they were just coming off of Alpengeist, which was a huge hit. It's not even that far away from Hersheypark, but this was like the next installation in like the timeline of B&M inverts, and it was the first time that they were doing, a big invert, but it wasn't going to be as big as the last one. It wasn't going to be another step up from Alpengeist. Once you built Alpengeist, there was like nowhere to go but down. And Hershey just built something so unique. It was exactly what they needed. It fit with everything that they had. They really shoehorned that thing in there. And like, is it as good as Alpengeist? No, but it's almost as good. It is. I think it's right there. Especially having ridden them like 2 days apart. There's nothing about this ride I would change because it is so weird. It is like a giant version of Top Gun at California's Great America, which is another B&M invert that for its size, a relatively low percentage of what the ride does is actually inversions. It's like there's kind of a non-inversion element for every inversion, and they're evenly alternating between loop and non-loop moments, and that's how I feel about this ride. My favorite part is after the 0G roll, where you kind of come up over the business end of Super Duper Looper, and then you do that super sharp left turn, kind of down, crossing over the river. It's just so random. Like, I think by this point with rides like Raptor and Alpengeist and Montu, like it was clear that B&M looping coasters, whether they were inverts or not, were moving towards a very inversion-centric formula where every directional change on the coaster, every time a ride went from like going straight to going left or right or backward was an opportunity to do an inversion. Where like with Montu, almost every directional change on that ride is an inversion of some kind. Alpengeist is the same way. It's all inversions to accomplish the change in direction. And then you have Great Bear where it's like they could have done something different. They could have put a boomerang or something over there. They didn't have to do that, but they did this bonkers sharp like a reverse chandelle at high speed. And then and then the crazy like straightaway and then barrels into the flat spot. I just love that. I love that. That is the part of the ride for me that like justifies its existence. It was why that ride is so impressive and leaves such a strong memory for me because
I enjoy rides that kind of let you feel the speed a little bit, like when there's straight sections on rides or kind of like that almost straight section on Great Bear, we can really just kind of feel that you're barely at high speed. I kind of enjoy that. Sometimes inversions or elements are so back to back. It's almost
you see that you're about to dive under the lift hill for Super Duper Looper before you take this corkscrew and then climb back up the hill. And you can your body you're tensing up. You're like, oh man, this is going to be sharp. Like this is going to be a tight fit, and it's going to be narrow, and the corkscrew is going to be really aggressive. And it's just a great moment. It's a great finale. It kind of, meanders its way back up to the station. It doesn't matter. It's kind of like everything on the back half of Alpengeist is a little meandery and, climbs its way back up. But the whole ride is so good that it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be balls to the wall for every second of the ride to be great. It just has to do that, when it counts. And if you're taking some moments to recover as you're like, you swing around the loop for Super Duper Looper and you're like hovering over Coal Cracker and then you hit the brakes, that's perfect. It's perfect. There's nothing I would change about that ride. It is perfect. It is a great ride. And the locals love it. It is still like the general public sweetheart, like the hometown hero for this park.
The fave. So next on the list, we went down to Coal Cracker, of course. Alex's fave. Alex's little fave.
My favorite ride in the park. I just love these aero hydro flumes. It's a lot like Jetstream at Magic Mountain. And the, Aquaman Splashdown at Six Flags Great America. Those, I think, they're the last three of that product line that are running still. They didn't build too many of them.
But the only one with the hump, right?
Kings Island had one. Cedar Point had one. Great Adventure had one. I think the log flume at Ocean Park in Hong Kong was technically a hydro flume. It had the boats. It had the little speed boats when it first opened. This is the only one that has the little airtime hill at the bottom of the drop still, which is bonkers. The Six Flags parks and Cedar Fair all decided that was something that they needed to engineer out of their rides as time went on, because I think people were getting hurt and stuff, but Hersheypark didn't care. Hersheypark has kept theirs the same. It's another ride. It's another Hersheypark ride that is just perfect. Like there's a nice long list of Hersheypark rides that are flawless. Storm Runner, Great Bear, Sky Rush, Coal Cracker, Super Duper Looper. Like all of these are just perfect. It's like I couldn't say enough nice things about Coal Cracker.
Yeah, I like Coal Cracker. I mean, it's kind of one of those parallels to Magic Mountain for me, where first of all, the aesthetic of that whole area is kind of Magic Mountain aesthetic. Super Duper Looper, Great Bear, Coal Cracker, the way like the aesthetic of buildings and stuff.
The little aero car ride, the Kissing Tower. That little area is my favorite.
Yeah, and you have like a hillside, where there's actual terrain, and you've got a hydro flume that has two lifts.
Just a great 70s
not two drops, but
moment. Like the aerodynamics trio of Coal Cracker, Trailblazer, and the antique cars. The double track aerodynamics car ride up there. It's just a great, great regional park celebration moment. Did you even put Trailblazer on the list? I can't even remember.
I did, because we wrote it later.
Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's right there at the bottom.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about it, so I just brought it up just now.
So the next ride that we rode was Sky Rush. Okay, Skyrush is just like the absolute fave for me. I think I still love that ride the most.
This is your baby.
So this is the first time we rode Skyrush since they added the new trains. And they rethemed it a little bit, gave it a new logo, whatnot. I didn't mind the old trains. I kind of liked how the sides of the seats were open, and then the little lap bar, even though it was kind of what people call a side crush because it was a little bit tense on your legs. There was something that just felt so out of control by having just that flat seat and just that lap bar, and then you're just flying around at some insane speed over the water. Now the trains are kind of more like Velocicoasters and stuff, where you have molded seats with divider between your legs and on the sides, and then you have your bulkier lap bar that's a little bit more comfortable, I guess. I was kind of afraid it would ruin the ride experience because I just love the super out of control nature of previous Skyrush. But you know what? I still love Skyrush. To me, maybe a ride to get used to it. I was like, maybe I like the old one better. But either way, you still have that super fast lift that's practically a launch into this 200-foot drop, and then it's 120-foot tall airtime hill right after. I mean, the airtime is just insane, and it's back to back, and it's out of control, and especially in the wing. I love sitting on the wing. Man, I just can't love enough about Skyrush. It's like my absolute fave. Love that ride, and it's so crazy. I mean, I understand that it's not everyone's fave, but man, Skyrush is just pure out of control. I love it.
The seat molds changing to the newer, like the Velocicoaster-esque seat. It's a huge improvement to me. I always liked Skyrush, but I never thought it was perfect. I always felt like the taxing nature of the restraint system would always prevent the ride from being higher in my personal interests, and would prevent me from rewriting it as much as I'd like to. Now it's perfect. Now it is perfect. Now I could ride that all day, I think, with how comfortable the seats are. The old trains, I would say, are still more comfortable for me than like any of the RMC coasters. Like,
I think I'd agree with that because it's no shin bars or anything. For me, the shin bars and RMCs are killer.
But now it's just immaculate. Now it is just like a comfort experience, a truly a premium. It really is like sitting in first class. They've got that whole marketing thing about like first class airplane experience, and like
that was kind of funky. Yeah,
little marketing thing that they did where it's like the seat is an improvement. You're like sitting in first class on Skyrush now, and it's like, that actually really works. Like, it is so true. It feels like you're riding in a throne compared to how it was configured before. But yeah, it's like I said, my little list of rides at Hersheypark that are perfect. It's definitely on there now. It wasn't before, but with the new trains set up, absolutely.
How much wish you rode it more this visit? We think you rode it 2 or 3 times. 2 times. One's the front, one to the back. Yeah. And I will say now it actually has more of a line than ever before because now people I think enjoy it more. Yeah. But man, I just love that ride. I think it is also another quintessential Hersheypark ride. Nothing really at Hersheypark runs alike with anything else except for maybe Candemonium and some of the clones, like the Wild Mouse and whatnot.
If there was one ride another one of those people do talk about around the world coaster-wise at Hersheypark, it's Skyrush.
Skyrush, Stormrunner, I still think people talk about. I don't know if people really talk about Candemonium much because at the end of the day, it's just like all the other B&M hypers of this era. Yeah. In fact, I just realized that I thought I liked Candemonium in the past better than Mako, but I prefer Mako actually. I think.
Yeah, we only rode
doesn't do much for me.
We're it doesn't do much for me. Bit, but I will say, like, we rode Candemonium one time, and I was not into it. It doesn't feel like now that Skyrush is so pleasant with the new train setup. I feel like Candemonium does not serve its purpose as like the comfortable hypercoaster in the park anymore. Now it just feels kind of boring. Like now it just doesn't. Like for me, the ride makes perfect sense for Hersheypark. It is absolutely a perfect ride for what they wanted to do with the Chocolate Town area, and like you said, being open early and like absorbing all of these people and being high capacity. But for me, as an enthusiast,
it works well for the park. It just for me, it doesn't really do much. We are
traveling and we're going to Hersheypark. Candemonium is so far down on the list of experiences that I would prioritize now. Because instead of feeling like a unique Hersheypark experience that we can only get there, it feels like a less good version of a roller coaster that we have down the street.
Yeah, no, it's true. So, I guess while we're on the topic, this doesn't do much for me. It always stacks. Like, operationally, it's kind
of weak. Operations are not good. Hersheypark's operations...
I mean, I like the idea of it being kind of down that creek and in the forest and making its way around. Like, it does feel kind of secluded, and like Alex said, it fits very nicely into the park. And it feels more like a hood ornament that is there to please general public than it is a ride for me. I feel like that's one of the least unique things.
Yeah.
But it's nice that they have a super crazy hyper and a super not crazy hyper right next to each other.
What the park needed, the right choice, but it's
a cool balance.
We are not the target audience for that ride, and that's okay.
100%.
But yeah, that was the one ride. Riding that ride in the middle of the day. We went back because like we basically started at the back of the park and worked our way forward, and then went back again. Even though it was the middle of the day and crowds for Candemonium it was not that crowded for that ride, because it was midday is when that ride is the least busy, because it's always first thing in the morning and in the evening as people were leaving that ride is busiest. Dispatches were not great. That was the one ride that made me realize, like, okay, like Hersheypark, it's a very safe park. It's a very, it's a likable park. People are friendly. People are good at their jobs, but the way their methods for dispatching trains on these coasters needs improvement, because it just takes so much longer to get a train out on their rides than similar parks around the world with similar rides. I just don't understand why it is so hard to get a train out on Candemonium. To the point where, like, we didn't even wait in that physically long of a line, but by the time we rode, I was like, okay, that's good. I don't need to deal with that again. And the ride's ugly, like cinder block candy nightclub looking staircase that you wait through to get up to the platform. I'm like, I'm good.
Where it's super hot inside and whatnot.
That's a little bit of a weird choice.
It's not for me. And then, well, I guess we'll go back to Super Duper Looper. I mean, super classic. It's another Magic Mountain kind of feel because of the, the classic super early
Even
generation
the station feels just like Revolutions, right down to the termite damage and the wood rot.
Yeah, right now it's looking very bad at Super Duper Looper. I don't know what's going on. The rest of the park looks pretty decently maintained. I don't know what it is, but like all the wood is rotting. There's like a bunch of termites and bugs running around and trash everywhere. I don't know what was going on, but
obviously,
Super Duper Looper needs a little cleanup,
Hersheypark
man.
does not shy away from spending money on existing rides. I think it's just that they make their way around the park and throw the money at rides as it comes. And there's rides that like Stormrunner, or like I got Stormrunner, like when it got the train upgrade. Stormrunner, when the Intamins all got their respective train upgrades, like that was a good example. Wildcat's Revenge getting its remodel, and when Super Duper Looper got its trains and they redid like the branding for it and stuff, like that was a great moment for that ride. And now I think they need to return. They need to come back around to Super Duper Looper again and redo the station a little bit, just because it feels a little tired. Super Duper Looper and Lightning Racers are the two coasters now that I think need some attention. But Super Duper Looper, the ride itself, once you've dispatched the station, is perfect. We rode it in the pouring rain. It had started to rain, and then it really it was like drizzling on our Sky Rush ride, and then it closed right after we rode it, our first ride. And then we rode Super Duper Looper, and it started like coming down like buckets, and we were soaked.
Yeah, it was bad. God, we were soaked. Couldn't even look at the ride. Had the ride again later because we couldn't even to see. Yeah, it was pretty bad. We rode
it again just to get it.
Luckily, there's a tunnel on the ride, which is kind of cute.
The tunnel was great. Yeah, Super Duper Looper is perfection. Just like a baby Revolution at Magic Mountain. Perfect in every way.
Runs so well. The trains are great. I really wish Magic Mountain had gone with I really like the Gerstlauer trains personally. I know that Six Flags, I guess, wasn't really a fan of Gerstlauer at the time, you said, but
yeah, after the Texas Giant incident, I mean, they were already having issues with Gerstlauer because I don't think they were very happy with how Daredevil Dive turned out at Six Flags Over Georgia with its like over-the-shoulder hydraulic lap bars. Like that ride's always been kind of a mess. And then the Texas Giant incident with the Gerstlauer trains on that ride, I think that was the end of Gerstlauer and Six Flags partnerships. Which made it pretty clear that they would not be going with Gerstlauer to do the train upgrades, even though Gerstlauer has the specs. They can rebuild a Schwarzkopf train note for note from scratch. The one at Hersheypark for Super Duper Looper is very close to the original, but I would say even better. In some ways, more legroom, just a bit more ergonomic. But yeah, that's what a great ride. A great example of what Hersheypark is best at doing is building rides like that and maintaining rides like that. Keeping the improvements coming. Magnetic brakes on the mid course, like really nice, nice adjustments.
Yeah, I will say that all the classic rides there, including the classic loopers, which is now Jolly Rancher, which we'll talk about soon. They've all gotten upgrades over the years to have better trains, track reinforcements, magnetic brakes. They all run pretty well, in my opinion.
Speaking of running well with new trains, Comet is the coaster that got new trains last year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So she is a fresh and clean girly. She upgraded from the standard PTC 3-bench folding lap bar buzz bar train to 3-bench individually ratcheting lap bar trains. I love these trains. I love buzz bar trains too, but as a fat person, I actually enjoy individually ratcheting lap bars more because I feel like when you have a folding lap bar that's either open or closed, that's like a little more snug.
Oh yeah, those were buzz bars, huh? I forgot. Yeah, you're right.
It was the buzz bar trains, which some people were kind of broken up about it. I just personally I can't relate. I will always be a single ratcheting lap bar girly for PTCs. I really enjoyed our ride on Comet. The trains are beautiful with the golden embellishments, and the nice royal blue paneling. Great ride. They've done some work on it. It's trimmed a little bit on the second turnaround, which doesn't surprise me. I think that it's just about you build a ride, and you have these beautiful new trains. Like, you have to protect your investment. The trims may have even already been there before they added the new trains. I can't remember. But I felt like the ride still ran great, and it's such a fabulous little family ride and a great little vintage ride experience. So that's another ride I wouldn't change anything about. Just a great little ride.
And then we also rode Trailblazer.
Yeah, by this point, we were doing re-rides and kind of ricocheting around the park.
I don't know if we were really planning on riding Trailblazer. For me, it wasn't really like a priority.
Though I do enjoy the ride.
It's so short, but I mean, I do enjoy it, of course.
It's like,
and it's one of the only scenic rides there that has kind of like a scenic vibe
to it.
It's
such a funny ride. Like, I love that ride. It is just so funny. That ride, I think, is the reason why Hersheypark went without a kiddie coaster for so long, because Trailblazer is so gentle, it checks the box. But yeah, great ride. That was another one where the dispatches were really bad.
They were miserable.
For a ride that doesn't have a line, that was like a station wait, the time that it took to get a train out was unacceptable. I understand.
Very painful. They wouldn't even really start boarding until the other train behind it was already back.
Oh my God. It was more uncomfortable just from like sitting in the brake run for a majority of your experience, because the ride's short. Everyone knows the Trailblazer is a short ride.
Yeah.
The amount of time you spend sitting in the brake run waiting for the train in front of you to dispatch so that you can get off of the ride. It's like, oh my God, like why do I feel like I'm being held hostage by this kiddie
thank God
coaster?
there's no line, but I would have been so annoyed if there was a line. Yeah. I mean, there's not much to talk about. I do enjoy it. This is, I think, one of the only rides really where you kind of go through the forest and trees, and it feels very,
it's so neat,
kind of naturey. It's maybe that and Super Duper Looper.
Its proximity to Storm Runner, I think, adds a nice level, like a nice dimension to the ride. I'm sure before Storm Runner.
But what's nice is I feel like you can barely even notice Storm Runner's there unless you really look up and look for it. Storm Runner's all up in the sky, and this thing is like all up on the ground.
I'm sure before Storm Runner, this ride had a very different feel to it, and then like the entire upper portion of the ride went from being in the nature to like hovering over Storm Runner's overflow queue, and then you go next to the station and you do that little dip around. I did love this ride. That's a great one. I guess, to be fair, I wouldn't change anything about this ride either. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with being a short ride. It should be dispatching lickety split, and you should be able. There's no reason why this ride shouldn't have already dispatched. If we're running two trains, there's no reason why this ride shouldn't have already dispatched when you come into the final breaks, because it's not a long ride, but it's also not hard to get these trains out. It's a very simple ride. Like, it's lap bars. There's no seatbelts or anything. Like, it's gas and go. So like, that's my only gripe, is that if you have a ride that's this short, like, don't make people sit in the brake run forever. and because you've overcomplicated the dispatch components of a very simple old ride.
Fair enough.
But that's the worst offender of dispatches on our visit.
I don't know how it was this bad, but on Jolly Rancher, I keep calling it the wrong thing. Sure, remix. So the parks for going Boomerang, it had a crazy long line. Luckily, we had what's called fast track. I think it's what it's called.
Yeah.
But even then, it took us forever to get on because, first of all, Hersheypark has this thing where they load a lot of people off the exit. Whether mostly it's for DAS. I guess it's like ADA, like disability and stuff. And so they will stop the whole train instead of just telling this. They'll tell the roads like, "Hey, you're not going to be able to board the next train because you're getting some people off on the exit." It takes them a significantly long time to do that, and then they open the air gates, and then somehow it takes them a very long time.
They wait until
to actually start checking restraints.
The exit pass people, the people coming in from the exit are seated and locked before they even open the air gates for the rest of the train. It's so unnecessary.
And that makes it all take super long, like super long. And so, yeah, that's just crazy to me. But anyway, the new Jolly Rancher remix, I will say it's kind of cool. So they added some audio, not on the trains, unfortunately. It's like off-board speakers. They repainted the things, crazy bright colors. I'm not a big fan of, but I love the MK1212 trains. The audio is kind of nice. And then depending on your cycle, you get one of three flavors. And they kind of really market as like a experience. You get taste, I guess, or smell, whatever.
Yeah, we got cherry.
So we got cherry. So the lights, there's like these Jolly Rancher lamps that are in the station. And they'll change color to like red to signify that we got the cherry ride cycle. And then you go through the layout as usual. And then there's a tunnel. And on the way through the tunnel, the first time, there's not much going on. You're just in a tunnel with a little bit of fog. And you do the vertical loop, you're on the lift, and then you do it in reverse, of course. And then when you hit that tunnel again, there's a bunch of like a fog in there with a flavor or smell, whatever you want to call it, that's in there. And then you smell like cherry heavily, which is kind of cool. I will say that's very different. And then, of course, you complete your ride cycle. The ride itself got a nice little glow up, a little flourish. Again, I don't love the super insane colorfulness of it, and I don't know. To me, it worked fine as Sidewinder in the western area because now there's this, super bright, flashy music, a disco light roller coaster that's sitting in the middle of Pioneer Frontier. I don't know. It's very Hershey because I guess they own the rights to this candy, but again, it's not like it's a candy themed park. It's not like it's a candy themed corner of the park. It's a Wild West area with a boomerang.
Of all of the,
I don't know. I just don't love the fit. I don't love it.
Worst offender. Having said that, I love seeing money being dumped into a Vekoma boomerang time and time again. This park loves this ride. In fact, when they built Fahrenheit with the boomerang in it, I think a lot of people started thinking that Sidewinder was going to be on the way out because Fahrenheit almost felt like a spiritual successor to it. It's like the looping coaster with the boomerang. It had 6 inversions. Like I was expecting, and I'm sure other people were, that the Sidewinder was going to have been rendered sort of obsolete. But nevertheless, it's still open. It's still popular. It is the backwards coaster. They don't have any other coasters.
I will say marketing it like this candy thing, it's kind of, I feel, giving a second lease on life because even the operations weren't great. I mean, the queue was full. Like, people were probably waiting at least an hour for this, while everything else was like 10 minutes.
It really works.
People are interested. Yeah, theming it to sort of candy. I guess people like it. And again, it does sound like it would fit with the whole Hersheypark idea. It's just that the park itself has never had a candy theme.
Yeah.
So then now having the candy all over the place, this feels kind of out of place for me. But either way, so we did a couple of rewrites. And I guess you kind of already heard us discuss operations a little bit. I think our operations for the park were not that great. I think overall, there was only one coaster I felt like they were getting the trains out at a decent time, and that was Stormrunner.
Absolutely.
Because they were using 2 stations. Everything else was like Stack City. I just thought that was kind of disappointing. I feel like they could have done a lot better. This is a really major theme park. And I feel like the operation should have been a little bit more solid. People should have been pushing a little bit more for the ops. And we came back on Comet, which Comet is a long ride. They were barely letting people into the train, and we're like just sitting there in the break. Great Bear, also terrible dispatches. I mean, all of it's. I don't think there was a single ride that had like good dispatch except for Stormrunner, which is kind of wild.
Yeah,
I don't remember that being a thing,
Wildcats
but I haven't been in 5 years.
Is average. The dispatches on that are weren't alarmingly bad. I just don't think there's no such thing as good dispatches. on an RMC
They're not alarmingly bad,
hybrid.
but think about it. The train rolls into the load station empty, right? And it rolls in right after the train in front of it is dispatched. So the train in front of it has a whole time to make it through the run and then park itself in the exit station. If this thing parks itself at the exit station and you're still barely loading up the train, there's something wrong. It just takes too long. Like there's just too. I don't know what they're doing. It just feels like there was just no rush. It was like just kind of chilling out.
Cracker.
Yeah, that's true. That's thanks you to that little
capacity cracker right there. Oh, and we were at the Kissing Tower, right? Like that was that on the list?
Oh yeah, that was pretty high capacity. Oh yeah, I forgot to put it on the list. Kissing Tower was kind of disappointing to me. It was an older, jankier, dirtier cabin. I remembered.
Shape of the windows and the windows it difficult to take.
You cannot even take photos of anything. You can't really look outside very easily. I don't know. I enjoy the idea of it, and I love observation towers. But this is actually, it looks cuter from outside than it really is. I think they need to get that thing a little overhaul. In my opinion.
Yeah, she needs some.
It feels very dated.
She needs an upgrade.
Very dated. Was it always the Kisses Tower, or did they add the windows like that later?
The Kissing Tower.
Oh, interesting. Because like the tower just feels so old. Anyway, so operations again left a lot to be desired. I think it's something they should really kind of focus on. Food wise,
the park down to me. The biggest thing. There's some things about the park that I think aren't perfect, but the operations are by far the worst. Aside from that,
I feel like we had better operations at Six Flags America. No, maybe not. Six Flags America for you. We had better operations probably at Kings Dominion for sure that week. We had probably better operations still at Busch Gardens Williamsburg.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that was really not great either.
Yeah, Busch Gardens
I don't know what's going on with the U.S. parks.
Wasn't great.
Everyone loves to complain
Kings
about
Dominion
Asian parks.
Is the hometown hero. It's like Kings Island. Kings Island operations are awesome. They always have.
I feel like Kings Dominion of our 4 parks we did. Because on this little trip, it's Six Flags America, Hersheypark, Kings Dominion, and Busch Gardens Williamsburg. And of all those 4, Kings Dominion by far had the best ops. It was like, all right, boom, 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 pushing stuff out.
And it's always been like that for us. Every time. This was our 3rd time to Kings Dominion, and it's always been
I expected a little bit better from both Hershey and Busch Gardens. And then, Six Flags America, whatever they give me, I'll take at this point.
Six Flags America,
we had a fun time. Listen to our last episode.
It could have been worse.
It could have been worse. So, operations, again, not great. Food-wise, we didn't eat much because at one point our computer systems were down, so we couldn't eat what we wanted. Well, we got walking tacos anyway in the water park, but we got honestly get snacked around. We didn't really eat at that park.
Rita's.
Oh, true. We got Rita's before we left the park. It was like a final thing.
We didn't eat anything Hershey. No candy, no chocolate.
I'm not a Hershey person. No offense, Hershey people, but Hershey chocolate is gross.
Yeah. Sean's
gross.
Dutch.
I don't know.
He eats fancy
close to Belgium
from Europe, and
Belgian, German chocolate. Hell yeah, but like
I like Hershey's chocolate.
I don't know what
it is. I eat it all the time. It's not.
I once on Dutch Facebook read somewhere that people described the Hershey chocolate like tasting like shit, like feces, and vomit. And like to be honest with you, I've always kind of felt that way. I don't get it. It doesn't even taste like chocolate to me.
Yeah, you're wild for that.
It does not taste like chocolate to me. I don't know. It doesn't really taste like chocolate.
Some yesterday.
Anyway,
a passenger brought us Hershey bars yesterday.
I'm sorry.
You're so stupid. It tastes like sugar and coke and it tastes like sugar and oil first, and then chocolate third.
So no chocolate then. The fact that you're tasting the palm oil, whatever they use in it, it's just gross, man.
Like I
don't get it. It tastes super cheap, bro.
But I like those things. Like it's a very sugary experience. It is chocolate flavored sugar, butter, oil. Which is fine.
Yeah, I know.
That's fine.
Anyway, so for me, it's funny because when we were at the park, I'm like, oh, they should be giving out candy at every ride, So this is Hersheypark. I'm like, I wish they would give you, even though I don't really like candy and I especially don't like Hershey chocolate, I still like the idea of them maybe like giving you a little chocolate at the end of a ride.
Dark ride
well, they do at the Chocolate World ride.
Yeah, the Chocolate World.
But I'm talking about every ride. You leave the Kisses Tower, you get a little kiss, like a little Hershey Kisses. You leave Jolly Rancher, you get a little Jolly Rancher.
Or like
come on, if you're Hersheypark, do it.
Maybe a Twizzler at the end of the
a
new Twizzler ride.
Small little Twizzler at the end of the ride, kind of like the Halloween candy packaging. Cup. Yeah. Oh my God. Then I would actually ride that ride. I think I actually do like Hershey's, like the Reese's a little bit. I like the Trader Joe's ones better.
Cup Fusion in 2020. That's a good ride. I like that ride. It's a credit.
Yeah.
It's a roller coaster.
Credit and forget it. So yeah, and then what else I want to talk about over here? I want to talk a little bit about the vibes of the park. The park, we kind of already discussed most of this actually. This will just be kind of a recap. Is that I think their themed areas are kind of like really weak. So the park technically has, please hold, it has Chocolate Town, okay? It has the Hollow, it has Founder's Way, Kissing Tower Hill, Pioneer Frontier, the Boardwalk Water Park, and then it has the Midway America. And so rides like Fahrenheit and Jolly Rancher being in Pioneer Frontier, I can kind of see Fahrenheit happening, but like Jolly Rancher is off the books. Having Midway America around the boardwalk makes a lot of sense because it's all kind of themed to being a classical like boardwalk with rides, and that is excusable. Chocolate Town is great. That also kind of works, and that's brand new. But then Founder's Way, The Hollow, and Kissing Tower Hill, it just kind of feels like one big giant mix to me. I don't know what they're really trying to do with
Tower
having these
Hill
areas.
Area used to be
I don't get
themed
it.
to coal mining, and all of the rides literally were related to coal. They had the Coal Shaker, which was a Philadelphia Toboggan Company cuddle up ride. Obviously, the Coal Cracker. They had another ride up there that had the word coal in it. I can't remember what, but it was very Coal Cracker is like the only thing left from that area that like it is related to the mining, like the mining theme up there. And then the vaguely western expansion themed areas of the Storm Runner, Trailblazer, Jolly Rancher Remix, Fahrenheit area. Not too bad. Actually, I do, as much as I love the Candy Chocolate Town area, this time I really felt like, because when we first went, it was brand new. This time I felt like it was too hot. There was not enough shade. There should be more trees. Founder's Way is so beautiful. It's, where...
Even Founder's Way is covered in these like asphalt walkways that I don't really care for.
The asphalt walkways are very old school, old Hersheypark.
I will say there's a lot of old character there. It does feel like one of those classic Americana theme parks. So I guess it's kind of the point of this episode a little bit.
Entrance and approach to Hersheypark, even though it was super impractical, it was really beautiful. I'm really glad that you got to see it.
I think I disagree with that. Even though I liked it, I just felt like it was not ceremonious stuff. Like Hersheypark is Hersheypark. The whole thing is like being in a chocolate town. And so having the event spaces there and having like the restaurants and whatnot, having it all kind of themed to being a little chocolate town. I love it.
What it should be. I just miss it.
Except for the Midway needs to get trees and planters because they don't do a parade. I agree with you.
I do think this is what it needs to be. I just wish that they hadn't reinvested in the asphalt sidewalk aesthetic of the area. I wish that they had done pavers, and like they've got nice stonework in the plaza in front of the park.
I wish there was more stonework, more bricks or whatever, and not
from scratch. I wish that they had because it was asphalt on Founder's Way, they were just continuing it through. But I wish they had just taken the opportunity to do something different and something, because black asphalt, it felt like a street, and I think that's the point, that's the theme, because you're in a town, and you've got the sidewalks on either side. But it's, for me, it felt a little lazy. It feels a little cheap. Like, give me.
If you're gonna do that, then park a few like antique cars on there and make it look like a classic street. Yeah, that'd be kind of cute. To me, it feels too. To me, it feels too much like it's way too wide and open, maybe for like mass amount of people.
There's a weirdly industrial edge to that area of the park that I don't like, with all of
and
the
it needs more mature trees.
And the cinder block, cinder block nightclub queue of Candemonium is just like weirdly utilitarian to me. I feel like it should be. The material should feel nicer.
In a way, it's very Cedar Fair like that. Because there's a couple of rides that have a very utilitarian queues where it's just like one little plaza or one little box of just switchbacks.
I don't mind when things are straightforward and quaint, but I just feel like sometimes the materials, I feel like you do this Chocolate Town themed area, I feel like the materials should be nicer than asphalt and cinder blocks. Even if that's like
I agree.
The theme that you're
it should be more quaint like that.
Industrial, I feel like it should still be nicer than that.
Yeah, I agree. But it is a start. I think it's actually a pretty easy fix. So I'm hoping they would do something with that.
Just drop some wooden planters
like it better
in
than
there.
the old entrance.
Easy fix. They don't have to do anything to the infrastructure at all.
Yeah, or park a few thematic cars or something out there just to make it all kind of seem like an old kind of chocolate town stuck in time. I mean, I like the idea of it a lot, and I think the approach is beautiful, and the restaurant and the new exit gift store and the side of the building that they, that they added those towers to, the chimneys. Like, I feel like the approach of it is really nice. You come in there, you're like, wow, it's Chocolate Town. And then you enter and it's just like a bunch of asphalt. But I think there's so much potential that they just got to work on it a little bit. Yeah. And then what do we think the park really needs before we end this episode? What do we think if the park is missing? I don't really know what
needs, in my opinion, is just the nitpicks. It is such a great park otherwise.
You know what I mean? For like a new like addition, like what kind of ride are they missing? What kind of coaster are they missing? Maybe coaster.
I wish I could say B&M. I wish I cared.
Because I've said from the get-go, oh my god, I want like a nice Vekoma looper here, like it's like a heavy looper.
I wish B&Ms didn't eat shit now, because a wing coaster is always my answer.
Oh my god, a wing coaster would have been so good for them. A terrain wing. I just love wing coasters, but I don't love Terra though.
Coaster. There's a version of, in my mind, there will always be a fantasy version of Candemonium where it's a flying, like a wing coaster.
Like a gatekeeper kind of ride. Yeah. Oh my god, could you imagine?
So yeah, I feel like B&M would have been my first answer 5 years ago, because after Great Bear, which was awesome, and then they finally went back to B&M after so many years to do Candemonium, it felt great. Like, it was a great choice. 22 years apart, but it didn't feel like it. And little did we know that Candemonium would be one of the last decent B&M coasters. So as much as I wish I could say that I would love a wing coaster for that park, I don't know. Then the next obvious answer is a Vekoma. Since they've got every Intamin that you could need, they've got the RMC, they've got wooden coasters, So I don't know.
Yeah, I know that they have a decent amount of loopers there now, but it still is not a ride that's like a looper. Everything is kind of a combination ride of stuff. So I wouldn't mind like a modern Vekoma looper, even if it has a launch. That's just kind of looper heavy.
I think they could use another launch coaster, maybe a modern style. They don't have a multi-launch coaster. They don't have any like a swing launch or anything like that.
But man, their lineup is pretty well rounded, because I cannot think of that much.
Hersheypark is not a park that I go to and think about what the park needs.
Oh, it's missing,
because there's not so many
missing
great
there.
rides. I'm confident.
There's more stuff I think of, like, oh, did they really, everything they do is kind of unique. Like, they kind of know what they need to add, and they always add something unique.
I think
and
actually
it's funny
what I'll say,
the lineup is well balanced.
The next thing that they need to do is
it's a major expansion to the water park. Take Wild Mouse out, build another slide tower.
Give themselves a slide tower. They need drop pod slide tower. It's time.
And with having laugh track right across the midway, pretty much, or maybe like slightly off the midway, but of Wild Mouse, I think they don't really need Wild Mouse anymore.
Is too like the space around the water park is too valuable for them to be tying it up with a Wild Mouse anymore. It was a fine addition for its time, but it's like literally sitting on what feels like should be water park expansion. They did their big water park expansion where Roller Soaker was, with the water coaster and the mat slides. That was perfect. The water park is a huge hit for them, and
I feel like that's where everyone's at. Like,
I think they need more slides.
There.
I think a proper, like a 6 or 8 slide tower with drop pod slides, where Wild Mouse is, which to me seems like the obvious move.
I agree. Yeah, that's actually a good point. But yeah, coaster-wise, again, a wing, if they improved their quality, would have been a nice touch. Maybe like a heavy looper launcher from Vekoma. But other than that, the park is so well rounded. I'm very, very curious what they'll do next and when they'll do something next. I think right now,
and water rides, they just have a great mix. They've got their big shoot the chute that's like part of the water park, so like that's a great fit. They've got Coal Cracker, which is just a national treasure. They've been good about flat rides with the remix, with the Zamperla Nebulas with Jolly Rancher, and now this year's new ride being the Scream and Swing. Like, it's such a well-rounded lineup of attractions. They're not want for anything. Everything they do is just optimizing now. It's little improvements here and there. All this like affirmation, actualization kind of stuff, because it's not like there's these obvious vacancies and gaps that they need to fill. They've got a great dark ride. They have an indoor coaster. They've really got so much. They've got just what they need in so many ways. So the only thing I can think of that would just improve the experience is just soft product stuff, because the hard product is there. This is really, even though it's like a national draw, maybe even an international draw, it still feels like the ultimate regional park experience, and I mean that in like the nicest way possible, because of like all of the stuff from the 70s, all the areas of the park that are so cute and very mid-century that feel like how Six Flags parks used to feel in the 70s and 80s, and the kinds of rides that they've kept around while other parks have cut them, things like Coal Cracker and the antique cars and stuff. Like those are just great rides, great things that highlight this park's commitment to holding on to the stuff that really matters and enriches the overall experience. So I would just say, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure they're going to build another coaster soon. It's only been 2 years since Wildcat.
Yeah, I feel like it's only time. But
they've never stopped.
I just don't know what they would do.
This
can be a big surprise what they would build.
They never go more than 3 or 4 years without a major coaster. So I guess I'm just curious to see what it'll be.
Yeah, me too. And that, I guess, proves our point from the very start of the episode that this park really is one of the big three. In my opinion, maybe it really is. Like
I really think it's third in
to the point at Hersheypark, and whichever order you want to put those in, because it really is such a significant coaster lineup, and they're also such strong players. Pretty much every coaster there. The park is great, and I think none of people talk about this park in that same conversation. And so I guess we're here to remind everyone that despite the occasional operational flaw, the park itself has just a phenomenal lineup. It really is an American coaster destination.
100%. I can't wait to go back. I'm already. I love.
Oh yeah, same here. Oh my god, if it was only a tiny bit more convenient to get to from where we're at all the time, I would totally be there more often. And we, like I said earlier, we visited a few other parks on this trip. We just talked about Six Flags America last week. So that was pretty much our last visit probably ever to that park.
Things are not going well ahead over there this week. They've started closing Superman and Wonder Woman, the Starflyer. Like that section of the park is blocked off from access on weekdays now.
So definitely make sure to listen to that episode where we kind of discuss our final visit and maybe some of the things we're expecting to happen with the park. And we, of course, have a bunch of other episodes. We're in season 6. We talked a lot about the United Kingdom. Got a couple China episodes. So make sure you leave a review wherever you're listening. 5 stars would be cute. And we will see you guys on next week's episode. Bye.